Hello everyone, this is Yana and Zhan, and we are going to represent Grey Room 61. Grey Room is a journal published by MIT Press. It brings together scholarly and theoretical articles from the fields of architecture, art, media, and politics to forge a cross-discipline discourse uniquely relevant to contemporary concerns. First of all, let's talk about two professors and the discussion about humanitarianism and global writing. In the case of Urban Citadel, Daniel Bertrand Monk and Andrew Herschel are both experts in history of violence, architecture, and urban space. The Urban Citadel is a tale of occupied Mount, and a historical city center of Erbil in the Kurdistan region of Iraq. It has been claimed that the site is the oldest continuously inhabited town in the world. However, it has troubling backstory, since the Kurdish authorities had cleared the citadel of its inhabitants, many of them refugees, as the first step in transforming the longest continuously inhabited site in the world into a certificate site of heritage. All residents that were first to move out would receive a compensation of MasterCard. Monk and Herschel identified as a negative dialectical view of these seemingly unrelated forces could prove a useful starting point for discussion across disciplines about the charged terms and analytical frameworks deployed in humanistic discourse today. And one may ask, what is negative dialectical? Actually, it comes from a book by Theodore W. Adorno, who seeks to update the philosophical process known as the dialectic, freeing it from choice previously attributed to it that he believed to be fictive. Thus, in the book Grey Room, negative dialectical means the negative view of Monk and Herschel towards the behavior of Kurdish authorities. Then we come to the second part, an article written by Lucia Ellis. This criterion should preferably be used in conjunction with other criteria. The writer Alice demonstrates the difference between humanism and humanitarianism. This disjunction has often been expressed in architectural terms as a disjunction between buildings and people, or between monuments and other kinds of architecture. This article is divided into 4 parts. Part 1 is about symmetrical history of monuments and people. Part 2 is about World Heritage Convention comparison enforced isolation, which means humanism is more important than humanitarianism. Part 3 is about homogenizing effects of World Heritage, lessons from Criteria 6. Part 4 is about conclusion, various ways of history writing. Part 1 mentions the bifurcation of history of human turns to monuments and people, humanitarianism. This bifurcation happens because the mass killing and mass displacement happened into 2 world wars, evoking response to protect human rights and architectural heritage. The consequence is that individual rights become the primary value, while the rights of groups were left behind. Seen from these perspectives, fixity was long ago assigned to the monument and mobility to the dweller through far-reaching legal code. Nonetheless, there is an exception called the Genocide Convention. It protects group rights and was assigned to law in 1948. Surprisingly, this proposed confliction was not truly applied to cultural protection and not preclude art and architecture from culture. By the time 1948, Hague Convention was signed. Nation-states agreed to protect architecture as an international value only after making a minor concession to monumentality. A site would be protected if, in the first instance, it was a monument, and if, in the second instance, It contained objects, not people. At the end of part 1, Monk and Harsher called on to dispel the air of historical inevitability, unless we give historical flesh to cultural critics or negative dialectics. To begin with part 2, we need to get to know World Heritage Convention first. It was conceived in a period when UNESCO approached heritage protection as a standard-setting project among others, such as revising textbooks, setting academic research agendas, and encouraging historians to think comparatively. Comparison was a working method, just like the feature of textbooks. There are many flaws about using comparative methods of heritage protection. It was not the architectural contents of heritage, but the status of convention as a species of property law that offered a crucial bridge between history writing and history making. Even though it was claimed that nothing in the World Heritage Convention mandated the removal of inhabitants from cultural properties, but in the case of housing projects designed by Bruno Taut and Otto Weger, they were designed for individual economic interests. The part 3 talks about how homogenizing affects World Heritage and lessons from Criteria 6. Although World Heritage System was clearly intended to optimize diversity, it has a homogenizing effect. And homogenizing effect is produced by 1. Heritage for international interests. 2. NGO using old-fashioned hierarchies, lacking of imagination, of intangibility. 3. Overemphasize particularism and monumentality. One place where the comparative alliance between history, law, and architecture has been continually on the verge of crisis in the World Heritage Criteria 6. Event is used as a central element to determine whether a building should be protected. Only 11 out of all 1,000 sites have been inscribed on the World Heritage List for this criterion alone. There are 1 genocide, 1 atomic bomb, 1 ethnic war, slavery, and indentured labor. Moreover, many of these sites are monumental because their architecture was originally designed for the containment of forcibly displaced masses. UNESCO showed their discomfort with these examples, claiming odd words as inscription limits further similar inscriptions, which means this example should never happen again. But the author points out that if they keep happening, or if turning all concentration camps into monuments become a form, maybe it's a possible way of reservation where humanism and humanitarianism would be compatible, and the split between culture as owned and culture as lived can then be fixed. One lesson can be drawn from World Heritage is that the relationship between international law and global history has been reversed. In heritage law, criteria intended to foster inclusiveness are being used to make discriminations. About part 4, the author comes to a conclusion that there are various ways of history writing, and historians should remember that no textbook has the power of law. They are subject to revision and to the unpredictability of learning. Thanks for watching.